Hello, everyone, and welcome to this radcast of the Social Club at the End of the World. Happy to be joined by my Queen Eleanor.
Good morning, Jamin.
Morning. Here in the smoky but otherwise beautiful state of Washington, and happy to be joined by Alex in Texas, by Dan in Chicago, Adam here in the state of Washington as well, Miles from Calgary, Canada, and last but not least, my sister, Hurricane Victoria, out in Oklahoma. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to go on mute so folks can say good morning and any opening words you'd like, and then we'll jump in and start bantering away on the situation of the planet and also possibilities for solution. Going on mute. Good morning, everyone.
Well, I'll jump in and say good morning, and I'm so glad to be back. Missed you all very much. Did a lot of research yesterday, and one of them was the one that Dan just mentioned, and just a lot of interesting things. So I'm sure you guys might have seen it this morning too. Guy was in Ashland, Oregon last evening, and they posted some of the pushback and question and answer, which was interesting. I think it's awesome, Alex. I looked at that same graph last evening, so be interesting to discuss some of that as well. So good to see you guys, and welcome anybody watching.
Yeah, Dan in Chicago. Good to see everyone. As the weeks go by, and particularly, each week seems to raise the consciousness, I think, of a lot of people. The intense, severe weather events around the northern hemisphere and even in the southern hemisphere are forcing people to consider what is actually happening to the planet. And I think you can see that suddenly, the news media, the mainstream news media, or at least maybe not too much over the mainstream television media, but you're starting to see many more articles talking about a runaway situation that, as James Lovelock, I think, said at some point, once you cross a certain threshold, the planet is going to do what it needs to do to reach a new equilibrium. And in this case, at a much higher average global temperature. And I think people are starting to ponder the implications of everything that's going on. And just one quick follow-up to what Victoria was saying about the recent Michael Mann interview. And I just consider Michael Mann to be somebody who, for whatever the reasons, always tries to present things in the most muted, comforting way possible. Matter of fact, it's easy for him to do it. But I think that, again, he was talking pretty explicitly about a major climate change that has taken place. And he was saying, the ice is melting in the Arctic. The Arctic is warming up much more rapidly than the rest of the planet. And as a consequence of that, the jet streams have been weakened and meander, and therefore they can't move weather systems, which are more extreme, along the way that they used to. And I had not heard that kind of that's what's happening, guys, from Michael Mann, and it just kind of admitting it. And he still tried to sort of mute it a little bit. Well, science has always understood A, B, and C. We always knew this, but he could not mention the fact of the methane hydrates, clathrates, whatever you want to call them, melting, and the consequences of having a tremendous quantity of methane gas unleashed into the atmosphere. And I think that it's not going to be long. I would say by, surely a year from now, when we're well into the summer in the Northern Hemisphere of 2019, and people understand, if it is the case, that things are even going to be more intense, more brutal next summer. And then you just start imagining what's it going to be in 2020, 2021. It's very, very hard for people to think in that kind of way. But I think it's going to be happening much sooner than we would have maybe anticipated. I'm going to go ahead and mute out.
All right. This is Adam. I think that we have to freeze the Arctic this year. I mean, I don't see any way to, if we wait until the temperatures are already going up. I mean, the temperatures in the Arctic are, 5, 10, 20 degrees centigrade higher, the record temperatures up there. So even though the ice that spreads out over the surface maybe even not as, there may be more area covered than the least amount in 2012, the volume is definitely less. And it just keeps on getting less. And so that bank's not heating up, the atmosphere, and the vortex, the shifting jet stream and everything, and then the melting ice off of Greenland is, messing with the ocean currents, with the salinity and all that. So the answer, I think that the answer is that we have to refreeze the Arctic. And hopefully there'll be enough ice left this fall that when the cool time, when the sun turns away from the North Pole, we'll be able to go up there and have enough of a skin of ice to start building it up. There are lots of ways to refreeze the Arctic. And I've got a paper that I am ready to post. I'm just waiting on something. And it's one we talked about last time I was on. But if we wait till next year, the thing's going to be so accelerated, it'll make it much more difficult to refreeze. But if we freeze the Arctic, I mean, that answer seems to answer a lot of questions. The one question I'm not sure of that is, will it, if you refreeze the Arctic, will it also refreeze the permafrost? And it makes sense that it would refreeze the permafrost that's on land. And the permafrost is what's releasing this methane as it thaws. But the question is, will it, when the ice freezes over on the floating Arctic Ocean, will it freeze the subsea permafrost? Because that's where the big hydrates are coming from. It's the subsea permafrost that has melted because of this big ice bank we've had up there, right? That's not there anymore. So we need to freeze the Arctic and really build it up as much as possible. And we need to do that this winter. That's my opinion. I'll go on mute.
Hi, everyone. I'm really glad to hear everything you're saying. I think it's a really exciting time right now where we can get really active, and I feel really positive. It's definitely going to be a different world than the one we've experienced before. And one of the things I wanted to mention that's happening here in the Northwest is that animals are really becoming activists as well. We have this killer whale mother who's been swimming up and down the coast with her dead calf. And there's a big movement happening here now where we're getting active. I'm with friends of mine about to create a human mural with children and adults of a mother orca and a baby orca, which will be traveling around the Salish Sea, and there are a number of us doing this now. So I'm actually wearing my orca whale, which is argillite that's carved by a native artist. And I just want to remind us that singing and dancing for Mother Earth, as the First Nations people do, is really important at this time, reminding her that we love her, and also prayer. I just wanted to put that back out there, as well as all the actual action steps that we have to take now to mitigate the impact of human habitation on the planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. And I just was talking to some people in Ireland, and this past winter, they had an unusual amount of snow, which was very peculiar for them. But that's an example of global weirding. Ireland should get several feet of snow. And just one of the things they said that struck as ominous, that when they get hit with snow in Ireland, they don't have the capacity to deal with it. They don't have the equipment, snow plows, sanders, and the roads, just with even a few inches of snow, become very treacherous. Even at the best of times, it's quite something to drive these roads in Ireland. But they, one of the things is that the whole country shut down for about a week. And in about a week, everybody was running out of bread. And to me, it's like, okay, that's got to move right up the priority list going forward, in addition to, as what Adam said, refreezing the Arctic. But we need to really start working together in small groups, little groups, and thinking about food security as time is quickly changing. This week in Saskatchewan, near where I live in Alberta, 41 degrees in Saskatchewan, which is a major wheat producing area of the world. And, I don't know, for how many days, I don't know how the crop is going to deal with that. So anyway, I just put food security on the table, and I'll mute.
Just a couple of thoughts. I do think that there is going to be a lot of energy. I think there will be a lot of positive energy on certain fronts. I also, realistically believe, I think it's realistic, that there's going to be considerable negative energy that's going to start to come. And one of the things that as we see now, this summer, it's a pretty much a wake-up call. It's very hard to ignore everything that's happening. But the question, one of the questions is, what kind of agendas are in play here? Because, as Guy McPherson has said for years, there's no way that, the scientific levels, say, of the Navy, the Air Force, intelligence community, there's no way that they're not going to be aware of what is transpiring. And in a sense, as things start to heat up, literally, you have to wonder what is going to happen. It's a number of people talk about, well, we have this population overshoot. And, with the population overshoot, you need so much energy. And because people want things, they need things. And so, people say things like, we need to have the population reduced to 500 million. That's what Mother Earth could actually support. And when I hear those things that a number of people talk about, and they talk about it as, you know, it's some people say, well, it's a you know, it's a very evil kind of an agenda. Anybody who's thinking that, you know, you're just going to let the warm up kill, you know, essentially billions of people, mostly beginning maybe in the areas nearest to the equator, and other areas that simply aren't going to be able to sustain life through agriculture of any kind. And so that is out there, and I think it does need to be discussed. And I guess what it brings up in my mind is when we talk about we're going to refreeze the Arctic, which clearly, if it's not done, it's going to be, you know, possibly that'll be the end of everything. But if we somehow refreeze the Arctic, as Adam was kind of bringing up, what would happen even then, and why isn't it even being discussed? And I do think that the consciousness is starting to come up. With a quick anecdote. You know, I told somebody who's a doctor who I know, you know, some of the latest stuff concerning the climate. And the response was, you know, this is really depressing. And what am I even, if that's true, what am I even doing? In other words, you know, the thought quickly came, wow, if this is really what's unfolding, maybe continuing to work as a doctor, et cetera, isn't really make even sense. You know, all my plans kind of go out the window. And I think these are things that do need to be discussed. And even though I know everybody hates it in a way, well, maybe they don't hate it, but they don't like to hear when I bring up issues such as, you know, maybe it's not a good idea to have more children if you're a young person. Maybe it's a good idea to start thinking seriously about how you want to behave as a human being if there is a die-off that's unfolding. Because if you don't prepare mentally to behave in what hopefully would be an ethical kind of a way, what will happen to people is they will regress very, very quickly to tribalistic mentalities, which we already have going on pretty strongly in the world. You know, you will end up getting a very, very violent, let's think about our tribe or our little group, and we don't care about anybody else. They don't like us anyway, kind of a thing. They would, you know, if we don't do it to them, they'll do it to us. The very predatory kind of, you know, sociopathic, psychopathic mentality, which many, many people have. So I throw this stuff, I know it's ugly stuff. It doesn't fit into, you know, a narrative of saving the world and everything could be okay, different but okay. But I do think that without people really thinking about it, it's very, very hard to mobilize people in a productive way. And anyway, then I'm going to go ahead and mute out and hear what people have, what everybody's thinking.
Well, I would, excuse me, just like to say that I had the occasion to travel recently, and I see it. And I was actually in Oregon and talked to people, you know, on the way back a lot. I did not find that awareness, and I'm glad you are finding it, Dan. I found people go, yeah, the fires are worse, but you know, there's always been really worse seasons. Then I talk about the El Nino with a pilot, no less. He goes, these things come and go. So I just thought, oh man, I know we've all discussed this on here many times, but it it gets frustrated.
Oh, you're on mute apparently, Victoria. Okay, very good. Well, I wanted to welcome and introduce Alice. Welcome, sweetie.
Hi. Sorry, I'm the third pea in the pod.
Good to see you.
Sorry, and I didn't mean to cut you. I was really interested in everything I was hearing, so I just wanted to continue.
Great.
Yeah, there's so many aspects and angles to this whole situation. You know, we're getting deeper and deeper understanding as time passes. My feeling is that the conscious is also being raised. It's just so obvious with so many disasters happening around the world, forest fires, record-breaking heat, and whatnot. So I just want to mention how I'm dealing with this is to take action, and the specific action we're planning for next is to rally the tech sector, the technology sector, to collaborate, to join us in building out the platforms we need for collective intelligence to really become that factory of solution generation. We need a solution factory, a factory to generate and integrate all the different solutions, from refreezing the Arctic to cleaning up the oceans, to holistic land management, building our ecologies, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're going to start this big push at the Microsoft campus in Redmond, Washington, the main campus of Microsoft, the first week of September, right after Labor Day weekend. So on Tuesday, September 4th, I'll be there in my Darth Vader costume. We'll have signage about abrupt climate change, and explicitly inviting Microsoft, led by their CEO, Satya Nadella, to join us and join the effort to build the platforms for collective intelligence. Because I really think this can be a total game changer. I don't think we've manifested even a fraction of the intelligence that we have the potential to generate, especially if you consider all the artificial intelligence technologies and the communication technologies that we now have. We've been still operating in a pretty primitive, tribalistic kind of hoarding modality, where very little is changing fundamentally, and yet we have the potential to manifest this tremendous intelligence with which we can generate all kinds of new solutions and also reintegrate old solutions that haven't really found their place or a mechanism to take off. I mean, there's so many great ideas and practices that are out there that simply need to be scaled up and spread. But because the situation is so complex and degrading so rapidly, it's a phenomenally complex problem or set of problems to solve. And so I believe we need a whole set of solutions, thousands of different solutions working together. So, you know, you mentioned refreezing the Arctic. That's going to take some pretty fancy engineering solutions. But then once we even have those designed, we need the political solutions to support that and fund that and repurpose militaries and other assets to make that happen. And if we're going to change politics, we need cultural solutions to transform human culture. And whatever those solutions are, we need media solutions and PR solutions to spread these new cultural memes and stories. So that's why I say we need like a full spectrum of solutions spanning pretty much all realms of life on Earth. And to get that and to integrate all those solutions, we need a solution factory. What I and many computer scientists would call a meta solution. That is that which will generate solutions. So I just use the term solution factory as a more simple and perhaps easier to grasp concept than a meta solution. So I believe Microsoft will jump in. This is a big, bold claim that I'm making, but I think that we're at an emperor's new clothes moment where it's blatantly obvious that we're in deep, deep doo-doo, but no one has really come out publicly in a big, public forum and explicitly addressed it. We're going to do that, but we're not just addressing the problem, we're also combining problem with solution, or in this case, meta solution, which I think is crucial, because if people are just faced with a problem that they don't think has any solution, why think about a problem that has no solution, right? So I think we need to introduce both the problem and the solution simultaneously for people to be able to assimilate both. So with that, Dan, by the way, if anyone would like to make a comment, please just go ahead and type into the text field your name. And if you don't have the ability to do that, just raise your hand and I will type it for you, as we did last week. Okay, is that you, Miles? Are you saying you wanna comment? Give me a thumbs up if that's the case. Miles, we got Dan and Adam up on deck. I see Miles smiling. I think your bandwidth is a little low, Miles. You were a little scratchy. Anyway, but anyway, Dan, go ahead, followed by Adam.
So, one of a couple of questions. These tech companies, again, it's hard to imagine that the upper levels, where various scientists with the necessary knowledge are involved, would not have a sense of what is happening. And so, again, if they are willing to, so in my mind, if they actually know that, the planet is imploding, and it's going to be something which is going to be very, very difficult to stop. And they're not saying anything about it. They haven't already stepped up and said, we really need to do something about this problem. We need to bring together all the scientific minds around the world in a cooperative fashion to solve this problem. Then, you have to start to wonder, is their solution, and again, it's obvious, fantasy, really almost delusion. Those of us who are extremely successful and also intelligent, we're going to go and find, some sort of a community on Mars. You're that intelligent, but you're thinking that. It's amazing. But we're going to have, the underground shelters where life is going to be great, and I mean, it is. It's really ludicrous, but you have to wonder about that. So I just bring that up. And another thing connected with the tech firms is, we have this craziness here in the United States where, it's all about Trump every day, around the clock. It's Trump, 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 and the thing that's going on, and I'll hook it into what I'm talking, is, you have this tremendous push for censorship. And, so we recently experienced, and I know down in Austin, it's where the InfoWars, the Alex Jones InfoWars media outlet was censored on Facebook and some other platforms, social media platforms, and I think it's pretty obvious that the other side, as opposed to the alt-right, Donald Trump is the savior side of the population, I think the other side maybe has truly figured out that it wasn't the Russians that caused their side to lose. It was probably the combination of all the alt-right media outlets getting into the homes and to the minds of vast numbers of people in the United States in the so-called, flyover nation. And so they are looking to censor that. But I think it's a big mistake, and it just reflects too what goes on with climate change. We have this endless censorship of things that are very important to the population, and so we have this kind of a trend emerging. If Silicon Valley prevails, I'm just using them as kind of an icon. If they prevail and they're able to censor, deplorable nation, they're able to get away with doing that, then what does that lead to? And again, I go back to, what do they know about climate change right now, and have maybe known for a long time? And then if you look at the other side, if Trump nation were to prevail, now that censorship has become, pretty salient in the minds of those who tend to influence and control things. What is censorship coming from that side going to be? And already he has censored a lot of information about climate. I think the censorship is a huge problem, and I think it's something that people ought to be talking about. If you know what is going on in the planet, we need to be able to have a discussion of what is going to come. What are we looking at? And also what, if anything, could be done, and what are the implications of that? So I just wanted to throw that out there. I will tell you, I've never been more, I'm going to factor climate change out of the equation for a moment. I have never been more disheartened in my life at what is going on now sort of in the country with this, the country's so divided. Each side hates the other side, essentially, feels they're traitorous, treasonous, and of course, the homicidal ideation is circulating in the psychopathic mindset, which unfortunately so many people in the United States have on both sides. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and mute out.
Hey, everybody, it's Adam Soul. So I just wanted to, I hear you, Dan, about the censorship and stuff, and I don't know what to say about that, but I know it's going on. But I would like to go back to the issue about refreezing the Arctic. And so the Arctic's melted, and what happens is there's the subsea permafrost, the polar ice cap, keeps that methane that's down there sequestered. It caps it. So when the Arctic warms up, obviously the subsea permafrost melts. You get the hydrates coming up, and methane and the potential for this big burst of methane, and also the methane, the permafrost on land melts, and you get all that methane, and then it starts, and then all the warming temperatures mess with the jet streams, and the ocean currents are affected, and so all these things are affected now. So what happens when we refreeze the Arctic? If we go up there this year, and I haven't found this yet, and I really need to look more for this, but is there a model?
You're breaking up, Adam. The last words I heard was, "Is there a model?"
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. What happens if we refreeze the Arctic? Is that modeled? Because so say we are able to refreeze the Arctic, put ice. What happens to the methane hydrates? Does that cause the subsea permafrost to freeze? Because if it doesn't, or maybe there's a time lag, then we could have methane coming up while the ice is forming over, and then you would have, you know, the whole Arctic Ocean become a methane bubble, so to speak. I mean, and I'm not saying we shouldn't refreeze the Arctic. I'm just saying that that contingency needs to be allowed for, and I'm trying to find some scientific journal or model or something where they've addressed this problem. What happened? My question, I'll just be real brief and say, what happens if we refreeze the Arctic? That's my question. Yeah. How does it affect the jet stream? How does it affect the ocean currents? How does it affect the weather patterns of the storm patterns? All this stuff. There's a lot of effects that the melting of the Arctic cause. So what happens if we refreeze the Arctic? I'll go on mute.
I certainly haven't seen anything on it in my searches, but my question is, I don't know that they've done a model of what it would be if we refreeze. Am I wrong there?
I don't know of any model that explicitly models that scenario. We do have sophisticated ocean and climate models, but it's certainly a great question. And more holistically, we need to figure out what are all the actions we need to take and model what all those will do. Will that be sufficient, et cetera, et cetera? And just to put in another plug for holistic solutions, we need to both determine what is the set of all the solutions that we can implement, and then what will be those impacts. And part of the collective intelligence platforms that we're working on include a global holistic model where we can model both the world as it is and the trajectory Mother Earth is on at present, and then all the what if scenarios. If we do this, what would happen? If we do that, what would happen? So that is the meta answer to your question, Adam, of what would happen if we refreeze the Arctic. And Alice, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. I'm really very amazed and enjoying what I'm hearing. I live in Europe most of the time, and so I've been, surrounded by young, active, very, wise, young and older human beings that have been, working on this for a long time. And I was really interested by the censorship part because I think the big problem indeed is the lack of information and education, the miseducation that we're all getting, and this sort of lack of responsibility. And every time I come back to America, I'm sort of amazed because this is the country that consumes the most out of, the entire planet, and yet we're supposed to be very educated, and we have this incredible, nature and this beautiful land. So I had spoken to Jamin about how I could implement, having this sort of multinational education and being from the younger generation of just wanting to make this movement a reality. So it's not just a bunch of incredible human beings that are concerned, but to make us become the mainstream. And I came up with the idea that to make it more attractive, it's kind of like to change, society, you have to enter it. And so my work is going to consist of just sort of gathering everything that we're talking about and make that the main information, that it's not going to be able to be censored because it's going to be what people want to hear, what people want to see, and what people want to have as a solution. So the scientists, the great minds are going to be understood. And I think that's what Jamin's saying by saying that the platform is going to include very diverse types of minds, because we have to be heard and understood and understand one another. And I want it to be attractive so that people who are asleep, it enters their little microcosm without them even necessarily realizing it, which is what's happening with Trump his administration and all these other administrations that are very smart in, I would say, quote unquote, brainwashing people to not think about the reality that's going on. And I have this urgency of really making that mainstream. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'd like to just jump in on that. As you said, entering into society, into the community. One of the things I'm doing is joining a group at Pace Bene, PACEEBENE.org, Pace Bene. It's led by Father John Deere, DEAR, and Ken Budigan. They've been activists for years with respect to their campaign Nonviolence. And in September, around the week of the day of September 20th, there's a whole week dedicated to this campaign Nonviolence. And they invite every organization, religious, non-religious, non-dominational, it's whatever organization you are, Radish, or in your case, Jamin, even just your street performance art, you could sign up for this campaign Nonviolence, and you just go onto the registry. Similarly, Adam, you could consider just putting out a little event. It could be you just set up a table and chair in front of City Hall. That's what I'm thinking of doing. And you just join this campaign Nonviolence. And we can bring this Radish collective intelligence, collective consciousness message through that vehicle that week. Daniel, for example, you're talking about the need for us to really get our head around what it means to be nonviolent under pressure. You know, even when things start going haywire, are we going to be able to maintain our cool, not going to tribalism? So I will probably have to bow out, but it's not because I don't think this is important. I just have some other conflicts. But I invite you to check it out and consider what you might do to connect Radish.org, what we're talking about this week of nonviolence. It's primarily a U.S. initiative. There is other cities in the world involved in Montreal, and I'm going to try to put Calgary on the map too. So anyway, thanks everybody, and I probably won't be contributing anymore, but I'll catch you on the replay. Cheers.
I think I'm up again. And I just want to say a few things about violence. And it's something that I have studied and, been concerned with during, the many years that I worked in some of the communities in Chicago. And of course, in the news today, it's Chicago is constantly being mentioned as, look how many people are being shot, et cetera, et cetera. But there in Chicago, we do have a lot of violence, which has to do with underground economies in very segregated minority communities, mostly African American, in the city. And sometimes the violence will spill into, the pretty significant wealth pocket in Chicago, downtown, north side, certain suburbs. But I think that, somebody, I think his name is Alan Fisk, and a co-author, recently came out with a book. I think it's called Virtuous Violence. And I think it touches on something which is very important, again, as we go forward. What the authors are saying is that most of the violence that takes place in the world historically has been what they label as virtuous violence, which means that the violence that is enacted has support within groups and within communities. So, you know, when the United States dropped the atomic bombs on Japan, that was a manifestation of what's called virtuous violence. When we carried out the Vietnam War, the people who supported that, it was considered to be virtuous violence. So we want to, and of course, on a more micro level, if somebody's family feels that if the family is dishonored by, say, a young woman behaving in an inappropriate way by the standards of that group, that they need to kill the young woman, that would be, you know, another form of virtuous violence. So again, I don't think that a lot of people are as tuned in as would probably be helpful to human nature from this very tribalistic, virtuous violence point of view. And it's something which does need to be discussed on a meta level because it's very powerful. And again, I've heard people say, you know, in Chicago, I will sometimes come across, you know, survivalists, you know, people who are preparing for some event. And you know, they have their basement stocked with lots of, you know, food that is preserved. They have firearms, you know, to protect the home, etc. And you know, but at the same time, there's other people who, when, you know, they hear something like that, it's like, well, good luck to you because, you know, hordes are going to be rampaging and your little fortress won't last that long. And so, you know, this kind of mindset, which is very tribalistic, it's hardwired. You know, I mean, pretty much everybody, I believe, is hardwired to be quickly regress to a tribalistic kind of a state if they're not already in it. And so on a meta level, in order to talk about, you know, the various scientists from the different tribes in the world, you know, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Russian, the American, the various European tribes. In order for everybody to be able to cooperate, there has to be a certain kind of understanding that the hardwired, you know, kind of tribalistic impulses and ways of thinking need to be restrained and controlled. And in order for anything to be restrained or controlled, there has to be adequate, you know, kind of preparatory rehearsal. That, you know, I may feel pretty tribalistic in a given moment. That's hardwired in, but I'm not going to yield to it. I'm not going to let it go. And I'm not going to allow myself to be sucked in to group pressure to be that way. So if these things aren't discussed on a meta level as you know, significant problems, it's very, very hard to overcome this. And I do think cooperation is really, sorry, I'll mute out right now.
Okay, Alex is up, followed by Adam. Go ahead, Alex.
Woohoo, everybody. I hope you guys are doing great. I just wanted to make 2 quick points. Adam, I think you're right about talking about modeling the Arctic. I'm a big fan. I was just thinking about the CIA, quick tangent, has the term blowback for all their foreign interventions in the Middle East and how that blows back, creation of ISIS, etc. But I would say that term blowback exists for technology. So like any technology, I think if I'm trying to think about this for a while, any like big technological fix we've done has bigger long-term consequences that outweigh the short-term gains. And I've been thinking about any technology that violates that principle, and I really can't think of anything that does that. So for instance, agriculture, you get overpopulation, etc. iPhone, now no one knows how to talk to each other, and we're all radiating. We have a radiator in our pants. But Jamin, I was just going to talk. Good luck on the Microsoft thing. My one criticism is I thought you tried to do this with Bill Gates. Didn't you try talking to Bill Gates about getting it and you couldn't get him on? But I don't know what else. I mean, I don't want to just throw stones because I don't know what to do otherwise. Like, I don't have a better solution than what you're trying to do. Good luck. That's it for me.
I'll happy to respond in a moment. Adam's got the mic next. Thank you, Alex. Good points.
Yeah, good points, Alex. And I wanted to respond to the violence issue that Dan brought up. And I've been doing some thinking and writing lately about what's going to happen after, at the moment of collapse. And so it's the scenario I think that may happen is martial law will be instated. So what happened with martial law is that, and martial law is actually, in my opinion, a good thing, because we need to have, we don't want people going crazy and running around. We want people to be as controlled as possible. And the people that I worry about the most are these people that have been hoarding guns and have quite a few guns and a lot of bullets and that I worry about that. So martial law might be able to bring in the military and the police and stuff and curtail that, which I'm totally for. The other thing about martial law that I'm trying to put out in my Road to Life plan is the Road to Life plan essentially does the same things that martial law will do, only it sets up a voluntary system. So martial law is going to like corral everybody and say, well, we have to do this and you have to move here and you have to do this. And it's all by force and tell us what we have to do. But the Road to Life plan shows us how we can do the very same things. The only difference is instead of being forced to do it, we will volunteer and go along with it and want to do it. And there's a huge change in the perception of everything when that happens. And another thing I wanted to reply to real quickly when I looked at Alex is that refreezing the Arctic, the reason I ask about the model is because it would buy us time. There's a whole lot of problems in the world, but if we can refreeze the Arctic, which the indications are, the science is that we can refreeze the Arctic. So if we do that, that can buy us time to get things figured out. And I'll just stop there. Thanks.
Totally agree. I'm a big proponent of geo-shading generally to buy us time. Not that that's going to solve all our problems by any means. I'd like to respond to Alex's points and question. So first of all, it's true. What I raised to Bill Gates several years ago was the possibility and the imperative for ending world hunger. And I proposed that we connect with Warren Buffett, who has a really good handle on railroad logistics, for example, and a lot of other big picture stuff, and suggested that through creating a global model of agriculture, land use, we could figure out kind of the optimal food production and distribution plan, and then make that a reality. Anyway, Bill Gates blew me off pretty much completely on that whole topic. And so now, if we go to what we're going to do in the first week of September, starting on September 4th at the Microsoft campus, we're like, for example, one of the signs will be Princess Leia from the original Star Wars Episode 4, 1977 or whatever it was. There'll be a big poster of Princess Leia with a big speech balloon that says, "Help us, Satya Nadella. You're our only hope." He's the CEO of Microsoft. And we'll have a little R2-D2 projecting, Princess Leia in a hologram. And I'll probably have a picture of Satya Nadella up in the corner of the poster, kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi, with its kind of a little bit of a halo around him and whatnot. And so what
I'm
this
seeing a lot of smiles, so it's already
Yeah.
a good.
see that's what I'm talking about. When you get people smiling, that's a big clue. And so the word will get out that Jamin Shively is back on campus, with this climate change thing, and putting gentle, loving, compassionate, but nonetheless pressure on Microsoft to jump into the fray. And that will beg the question among Microsofties and others, well, what does Microsoft have to do with climate change? And the dawning realization that I hope will happen, and I will certainly encourage, is that the national governments of the world are completely failing us on this issue. Most of them are asleep at the wheel, but all of them, with the possible exception of France, are completely failing us on doing something about this. And so if not national governments, who? Well, the tech sector has tremendous resources, technology, talented people, etc. And I think we're off to a really solid start with the collective intelligence platform to be that solutions factory. Not just a factory of generating solutions, but also generating analysis, doing the modeling, helping us understand what we need to do. And
I'm sorry.
please.
Just to answer Alex as well. Hi.
Yeah.
I think also maybe why last time it didn't work as effectively as this time was when the world is completely changing and at a very rapid speed, right? So we're sort of heading for this wall. A lot of people, whether they want to admit it or not, are aware of that. And also, this is giving them now an opportunity to be the cool guys, to be ahead of the game. Because as I was saying to Jamin, and I spoke about this, and I was saying it's funny because Microsoft is kind of lagging behind. I mean, if we're going to talk tech, which is not at all my arena, but all of us know that Apple is super in and people are buying more iPhones. I don't have a Hotmail account anymore. Microsoft is not as cool as it was. They were the first ones out there, and now they're sort of lagging behind on certain aspects. Again, I'm not a techie, so I don't know where they are, making it, and they surely are. Like you said, they're full of young, brilliant minds. And it's giving them this opportunity to be, the solution and the, leading this new era, if we can call it this, of intelligence, whether it's emotional intelligence. We can even, I'm going to use the word spiritual here, and, because I'm not afraid to use it, because I think there is an awakening. I don't want to use that word, but it's like creating this new technology, creating this new way of seeing technology, because we are all slaves to it, whether we want to be or not. And it is the number one power today. We can use the word power. And
Yep.
So Jamin, I mean, everything I've been hearing is so ironical, because it's like ironic, sorry. There you go. That's the European mixing words. There's this feeling of it was inevitable kind of thing. The guns, the, violence on the earth, violence on ourselves. I hear a lot about this fear, but it's like my generation, I'm going to be 32 in the fall. I don't have children yet. And all the youth that I'm around, whether they're in their early 20s or younger, are depressed. And so there's a general depression. There's a general not even wanting to do this. So the hoarding of guns and food doesn't even come into our minds, because what's coming into our mind is suicide. And so there's like a general lack of interest in finding solutions. And I think what we also have to do, and what Jamin and all of us are participating in, is raising the energy level so that there is hope, so that there is a sense of being together. And you know, right now we're all white talking, but, you know, I want to include also, and we talked about this, you talked about this in the, you know, Chicago and all the sort of, you know, the usual, always the same sort of the minorities, and then people who are left out. So all the marginalized communities, and then all the people who do know how to live a healthy life. So I think, again, this whole movement is including many different aspects. And by mixing age, you know, race and gender and experiences, then we come to solutions quite quickly. And I think we realize that we're all the same and connected despite our many differences. So I'm simplifying here. I'm making it sound really easy, and I know it's super complex and complicated, but it's quite basic as well. So it's to sort of get back to the essential points. And this campaign with the techs, the solutionaries, the revolution of solutions, the meta solution, all that Jamin's talking about, it sort of bridges all of what we're all talking about, whether it's freezing the Arctic, which is extremely important. And I think the #1 problem right now is the environment, beyond violence and all that. But again, like we've all mentioned, that they all come together and they're all going to be activated, right? So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, great points. In fact, you've articulated very well the thesis of collective intelligence, which is that if we all come together from our diverse perspectives and work together, we can co-create all the solutions that we need. But just like this video conferencing platform, we need the platforms to bring us together. We need to complete the platforms for collective intelligence. And part of the reason I'm so confident this will work is that, just suppose hypothetically for a moment, Microsoft takes a pass and says, no, we're not interested, right? Some other tech company, big tech company, will step forward and say, all right, Microsoft is once again relinquishing its leadership. We will happily take the leadership position. You know, Google will happily sponsor, you know, a conference on collective intelligence for saving life on Earth, and, you know, off to the races. So that would be, for computer historians, Microsoft's Gary Kildall moment. And that is the plague in technology. Nobody wants to be the next Gary Kildall. And the reality is that, you know, abrupt climate change is the next big tech wave, even though very few people see it at the moment. It's the next big tech frontier. It's not helping teenage girls in Southern California buy lipstick through an iPhone app. It is addressing abrupt climate change. So I think with the competitive pressure on there, there will be a lot of buzz, and somebody will jump in first, whether it's Microsoft or Google or whoever, and then there will be a stampede. It will be a gold rush for building out collective intelligence. So that's why I'm so confident about it. Dan is up next, followed by Alex, followed by Hurricane Victoria. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I was going to make a couple of comments on martial law, but I'm going to, and all I would say about that is I think, you know, yeah, we can't have uncontrolled gangs rampaging around Mad Max style, but martial law will probably be a disaster. And I think in the United States, people need to realize that the majority of Caucasian police personnel and Caucasian military personnel and Caucasian militia personnel, et cetera, these individuals pretty much support Donald Trump or kind of some of the things he stands for, et cetera. And if they impose martial law, it may not be a very pretty picture. Historically, we have many examples of what happens when that occurs. You tend to get a purge of one side who is no longer considered to be acceptable in the community. It's a lot of people here. But I wanted to go to the issue of young people and sort of the concept of you know, suicidal ideation. And you know, it's pretty clear. I mean, you know, when I used to work in mental health, and I still give presentations. And one of the things that's not so well understood is just this, that if you have a loss that's in front of you, that you're contemplating, that you're dealing with, you, among other emotions, you experience the emotion of sadness. And sadness is an emotion that is there in a very basic way to get us to accept permanent losses. So it gives you automatic thoughts that of hopelessness and helplessness. And the idea is that when you have these thoughts of hopelessness and helplessness concerning a permanent loss, you will come to realize it's time to move on and to grieve and then accept the loss. But in the mental health world, what happens, unfortunately, is people get into a state of a very negative emotional state. It's not just sadness, but sadness is a salient part of it, probably the most critical part. And what happens is people start, instead of understanding that if something is a permanent loss, let me grieve it, accept it, move on. Instead, what they do is they start to have thoughts, repetitive thoughts, such as, you know, there's no future for me. There's nothing left for me. Maybe somebody has died and they're grieving the loss of a loved one. And then they start having these thoughts, without this person in my life, there's nothing for me. And all I have to look forward to is this pain, this loneliness, this desolation, etc. Well, if you start having thoughts repetitively, there's going to come a point where somebody will cross the line from just having thoughts or ideation to beliefs, the actual crystallization of beliefs. And once you have a belief that there is no future for you, that means that what will happen is your mind brain will give you all of the information that you have stored away that supports that belief. It will not give you easy access to beliefs or knowledge that contradict or contravene that belief. And whenever you get it put in front of you, what a person will do is they will minimize it. You know, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but if you really knew what it was like to be in my shoes, you'd know it was a lot worse. Or they will rationalize it. You know, when I used to do therapy, they'd say things like, well, Dan, you're a therapist, and you know what? Your job is to give me hope. You don't even believe what you're saying about me. You know, stop the BS. And this is what happens when you get beliefs as opposed to just sort of what we call in mental health, just the ideation. You haven't crossed over to the intent. And of course, once you start having the thoughts of there's nothing for me, I have no future, it's just pain, emotional pain, and maybe it would be best for me to just exit. And then you can start having, beliefs that suicide is a viable alternative. And people do need to learn to be able to differentiate between what is a permanent loss, what's a temporary loss, and sometimes something that isn't even a loss at all, such as your future. And I do see, conditions here when we're talking about possibly the loss of, humanity, this kind of a thing. From a mental health point of view, it would really be good if people could, at this point, again, as I think we all in this conversation agree, that the loss of the planet is not some permanent loss, some inevitable thing. We're all trying to find ways to combat, that possible outcome. But at the same time, the anxiety, the fear over that potential outcome needs to be managed, needs to be dealt with. And in normal basic anxiety management, you have to tell yourself, hey, that threat's out there, planetary death. I'm going to do everything in my power to prevent it. But if it does, in fact, occur, this is how I'm going to deal with it. This is how I'm going to go down. I can cope with it. And that will prevent a person from having an anxiety triggered breakdown, which happens all the time. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to share that and put it out there. I'll go ahead and mute out.
Thank you, Dan. Alex is up next, followed by Victoria.
Mute. Okay, off mute. Okay, great points, everyone. What I was going to say about the Microsoft thing, and I don't want to be a negative Nancy here. I've been getting really depressed lately, but I guess my whole thing about going to Microsoft, and I understand where that's where you work, James, is that the whole point of a corporation is to create profits. And people do not run corporations, the corporations run us. So let's say you get Satya and he says, oh no, we've got to save the planet. Okay, then he would just get fired. Then they would just replace him. Then the board would replace him. And let's just say let's say he somehow convinced the board, okay, that we got to save the planet. Then the company would go bankrupt. Then they wouldn't exist because they would be in violation. The system itself only sees one thing, and that is profits, essentially, okay? And that's just the problem is that like, even though I know I used to want to work at Google when I was in college, right? And their slogans "Don't be evil," and like they have all this whole thing of forging life, and whatever. Even though they do some evil things like spy on us, but right? But they just do that. They still have the one goal to be profitable. I always look at a corporation. They may be doing something nice, but I ask them, how do they make money? Bill Gates is the most philanthropic man on earth, but he also saves a lot of tax money through those philanthropic organizations. So that's just my point on that, is that it's kind of systems theory, where if they go in violation of the system, then they'll just be kicked out of it. They must support the system they're in, or else it will reject you like a virus. Another point on Adam, I think with any technology, anything we do, and this is just the real hard debate, is that if we refreeze the Arctic, that may give us X amount of time. But with any technology, with anything we try to do, there will be pluses and negatives. And a lot of people try to basically put technology as utopianism, where it's all positives. And that's just not true. I like any technology, as I just said, pretty much has negatives. I would say almost in every technology I can think of, the negatives in the long run outweigh the short-term benefits. So in terms of refreezing the Arctic, short-term benefit, we get 2 more years, we get to whatever, we do get more time. I'm not going to debate that, but does ocean acidification get worse? Does something X happen that we don't even know about, right? So like the global dimming problem or whatever, like, right, we've waited so long that now we have a global dimming problem. So that's just really hard to do, is just see with anything we do, there are consequences. And people just don't debate this. Like, what do we do with our extra time? Do we then get rid of nuclear and then find a way to humanely kill everyone on this planet so we can all die humanely or something? Anyway, that's it for me.
Great points, Alex. So Victoria is up next, followed by Jamin, followed by Alice.
No, Alex, great points. And actually, to speak to something that Alice and Alex said, and I don't want to be a negative Nancy either, but this forum is to discuss these things. But in the last 11 months, my 31-year-old cousin and 2 of my former university students have committed suicide. We can't say that that is about climate change, but you said it, Alice, and you did too, Alex. Something obviously is happening. When I was in Oregon, I actually met several times with Dean Walker, who wrote the book, The Impossible Conversation. Like, how do we talk to people? How do we bring it up? It's been very humbling for me. I teach communications at a university level, and I'm not doing too well with that. And it was interesting because he said, it doesn't, I know that we've talked about today, oh yeah, they know it even if they don't know it. I'm telling you, my last job, I was out every day calling on businesses. And you can just sometimes in conversation work up just questions or whatever. I'm not finding that. And I had on a mask in Medford, Oregon, filling up my gas tank, talking to someone who said, nah, really, climate change has nothing to do with this. We have it all the time. What can you say to that? I mean, that happened to me about a month ago. what I keep hearing over and over and over, and I was listening last evening to two gentlemen in Australia because I listened to a lot of their call-in radio on the climate, because I'm sure everyone knows how many cattle have had to be put down the last 10 days, not to mention sheep. And they were bringing up, I thought, a very good point, is they think that a lot of people are going to have to die somewhere on the planet. It will have to be absolutely, yeah, this is climate change, which we've seen how the media handles that when all media in the United States is held by 6 holding companies. So I don't know, but those of you that are talking to the average person out there, I mean, it's one thing to talk to people who are concerned about it, but I just throw that out because I think you have to have an opening. And speaking with Dean Walker and a couple of other people in Oregon, it's going to take everybody coming together and demanding something to be done. But how do we get people to demand it to be done when they say, I had dinner with a former student this weekend. She's 25 years old, has a 1-year-old daughter. And she said, one of your hobbies is this climate thing, right? And I said, yeah, it's kind of a hobby. So she started asking me questions, and she said, I just truly believe, as much as she said, I think the government would say something if we were in danger of death. I'll mute out.
All righty, so I'm up next. So I'd like to address Alex's points. Very good points, by the way. Corporations are certainly beholden to the mandate to maximize profit. It's actually part of their legal structure. And the reason I'm so bullish on this is several-fold. One of the factors is that for corporations in tech who are trying to sell their products or services to consumers, it's extremely important that that company be perceived in a positive light by their customer base, by the public. And so if Microsoft jumps in and takes a lead on climate-related stuff, which doesn't necessarily mean a huge investment of cash, but even some level of commitment, however modest, that would get them a tremendous amount of goodwill among the public. And versus if they took a pass on it and some other tech company stepped forward, then Microsoft would be seen once again in a negative light, like they have so many times in the past. So public perception and goodwill are very important things on the balance sheet of a for-profit corporation. Another factor to consider is government contracts. If Microsoft steps out and takes the lead, they might get government contracts to do projects related to climate change. And third, and perhaps most importantly, is the opportunity for big tech companies to play a leadership role and be a part of building platforms for collective intelligence, which I believe are going to be the next big wave in increasing in technology generally, is reintegrating humans in a way that we can co-create with AI, co-create all manner of solutions and opportunities, not just climate related. And so there are lots of ways that Microsoft could benefit financially from doing the right thing and playing a leadership role as regards tech. And as I mentioned on my last commentary, if Microsoft doesn't do it, somebody else will, and then they'll get the glory, the government contracts, the goodwill, and the leadership in collective intelligence. So I because of all that, I really think the smart move from Microsoft would be to jump in, and and it's kind of hard for me to imagine a scenario where they wouldn't, given all the pressure from the degrading planet and everything else. What did Alex just say? None of them will, or none of them will. Yeah, that's certainly possible. But consider this. Let's say none of the big tech companies jump in. Some second tier tech company can jump in and then start their own meteoric rise, based on that. So anyway, those are my comments on that. And the proof will be in the pudding. And Alex, I invite you to come join us on the
Yes.
Microsoft campus, first week of September.
I'm staying an extra week myself I was supposed to go back to Europe, and I'm sticking to this event because I think it's my turn to talk.
It is actually, yeah.
Jumping in.
Yeah.
So on everything we're talking about, I really believe strongly. I mean, in the beginning when Jamin mentioned to me this tech thing, I was like, you know, I'm also have my iPhone, I've been using it, and I was like, no, why does it always have to be them? But I think this is where we're smart, is we're using them to do good, like Jamin just said. And I think all people today realize, you know, as much as the younger generations, I was talking about a negative, there's a lot of positive. There's a lot of very smart kids out there who are very alert and awakened, and much more even than the 30, 40-year-old branch that are sort of born without it, and then it appeared, and then it's like this mecca of information and relationship. And why I mention this, and I really underline it, as Jamin is that we're talking, all of us, of this need of better communication and community that will, even if it's at a small scale. A lot of my European friends and I have been noticing that we can't save the whole entire world, each one of us, but we can save ourselves and we can save our immediate environment. Why I say this, it doesn't mean that we don't care about what's going on across the borders. I myself have about 4 nationalities, so I'm a mixed batch, and I don't know where home is. Home is the planet. But wherever I am, what I'm going to try and do is have an immediate, radiation of awareness of what's the local food, for example, or how can I pitch in locally? What's the seasonal, food? What plants should I plant so that I help my immediate environment? And that kind of little small thing can have a huge impact globally. So for me, it's super important that the communication part happens on a local level, and with Radish and this more complex platform, that is then shared. So people have hope again. They see what's going on, because the media, this fear, this lack of information. I went through last winter, I think it was the most depressing winter thus far, with everything that was happening in the world. I live in Brussels most of the year, so gray, very gray, no light, capital of Europe, where a lot of things are going down, European Parliament, global security, etc. And what I saw was really, very difficult to overcome. And my friend said, you need to start seeing what is being done, because there's a lot of positive happening. And I shifted gears, and I started looking and conversing and sharing and getting active. And that shifted the whole entire paradigm. And so now I'm seeing a lot of action and a lot of things happening. So I think what we're going to be doing on the Microsoft, headquarters, is really reminding people that it's through action. It's not just through, whether it's getting depressed, whether it's, being negative, or just not doing anything and waiting for, sorry, my language, the shit to hit the fan. There's a moment where community is key and sharing experiences is key. And then from there, we find solutions. So.
Okay, it is Dan. Dan is up next, followed by Alex. And actually, wait. No. I think Adam. Wait, Adam. Adam is up, and then Dan, and then Alex. Sorry. Go ahead, Adam.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Jamin, I wanted to ask you a question. So you're going to be putting this collective intelligence meta system together. What's the time frame?
Okay, I'll answer that after Dan and Alex. So go ahead, Dan. Noted. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so just following up on what Alex said, concerning corporate culture and the reality, and it's not just corporate culture, it's the same, in a much more well-defined way in military culture, and certainly in government structures, like city government, federal government, state government. Whenever you have an authoritarian bureaucratic structure and culture, people do figure out how they can survive in it. And we do have, and I know people will disagree with me on this, but we really have a very sociopathic or psychopathic culture. And it really kicked off in 1980 when the neoliberal revolution really occurred with Reagan and Thatcher in England. And the thing here is, people can go into a corporation or they can go into a mental health system, and they can be very well motivated and have really sort of an altruistic, cooperative outlook. But what will happen is the system itself will start to make clear that if you want to be a part of this, if you want to get ahead, and you don't want to lose your income, your ability to live, you have to follow the expectations. And generally speaking, I'll just end it with this anecdote. Out here in Chicago, out in the 10th ward of the city, the far southeast side of Chicago, which used to be the home for the steel mills and all sorts of industrial corporations and projects and, warehouses. And it looks different than any other part of Chicago right now. It still has the old industrial look. And there's a community in Chicago, which some of you may be familiar with, called Lincoln Park. That is one of the most wealthy areas in the city of Chicago. And there was a corporation based there called General Iron, which was kind of a scrap metal processor, et cetera. And they'd been there from, they were a holdover from the old days in Chicago when the North Side had not been gentrified and still had many industrial neighborhoods. And that was one at one time, many, many decades ago, really. But it was still there, a family-owned corporation, General Iron. And Lincoln Park residents, most of whom are, upper middle class or elite level, didn't want this dirty, polluting corporation to be in their neighborhood. And so what happened was the 10th ward of the city, which was still zoned for a certain kind of industrial development, was designated as a good location for this General Iron Corporation. But in order to probably avoid being scrutinized, they ended up merging with another company that was already located there, so that they are now going to move out of the very, very, upper middle class elite Lincoln Park neighborhood out to the 10th ward of the city, which at this point in time is probably it's a very, very large Mexican population that lives out there, and some Caucasian and Black residents mixed in. And so but here's what it's going to be. It's actually going to be, as they put it, a state-of-the-art toxic waste disposal, place. And it's going to be the only one in the Chicago area. So, there's naturally, there's pushback against this, some pretty good pushback But at the same time, you know, one of the kind of ways that, you know, looking at it is, you know, we sometimes talk about, you know, that old fable, you know, the scorpion and the frog, you know, where, and I don't remember exactly, you know, how it was, but it's kind of like, you know, the scorpion wants to get across the body of water, and it says to the frog, you know, could you take me across? And you know, and the frog goes, well, you'll sting me, you know, you're a scorpion. And of course, you know, the frog says, oh no, you know, I don't want to die. I won't sting you. Please help me, you know, take me across. And then, of course, when they get out in the middle, the scorpion, you know, stings the frog and they both go down. And to me, that does really represent the corporate mentality. They'll say anything, you know, and then they'll do what they do, make profits at all costs, externalize all the damage onto the communities. And again, I just think it would be so helpful if there could be, again, I use this meta level concept where we could really just, you know, let's be honest about it. And it would be nice to have, look, if you're working for a corporation right now, you're in that authoritarian bureaucratic structure, and you want to take care of yourself and your family, et cetera, you're going to probably, you're not going to be likely to step out of line. But there's plenty of people who are retired, just like we see, you know, these days, you know, there will be some retired military generals, et cetera, people who are now retired, willing to step up and speak about certain things that nobody who's active is going to do. And I really think that would be a great thing if retired Microsoft executives like you, Jamin, but you know, and with these other places would, you know, who simply, you're no longer a part of it. You don't depend on, you know, your bread for being a good soldier in the corporation, and to step up and say, hey, this is what we know. This is what needs to be done. And of course, those who are still caught in these authoritarian bureaucratic structures, they don't really have what it takes, understandably perhaps, to really step out of line and say what needs to be said. I'm going to go ahead and mute out.
Good stuff, Dan. Alex, you're up next, followed by Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. I forgot what I was going to say, but I basically was going to say, I was going to apply to, who's that, Vic? Who's that sitting next to you, Jamin? I forgot her name. No, that's not Vic.
Alice.
Yeah. Alice. Nice to meet you, Alice. So I agree with, I guess I'll just say this because I got to go, with taking local action. And Guy says this, but like the antidote to despair is action, right? Something like that. And so like I actually had a social club at the End of the World meeting in Austin, Texas. I put a meetup on austin.com, and then I renamed it to a Death Cafe later, but I got 6 people to come. 6 people came randomly, and I explained to them basically the whole slideshow about climate change. And then those 6 people did not attend the next meeting. So it shows you what I did last time, and I got their phone numbers, but they didn't buy it. They thought I was very aggressive, and it's really sad. You know, I'm 25. I tried describing this situation to my parents, and they don't buy it. They think, you know, they essentially think every generation has had their problems, and you know, it's our job to solve this problem because, of course, you know, they're all the same degree or something, like they think that, or some crap. So it's like, and my parents are smart. They taught me, and they taught me how to think and actually understand stuff, and I don't blame them, but they're insane. And, you know, like, so it's just like, and I joined like 350. I've joined social groups, and this isn't to say like I'm better, but that's what I would tell anyone for social despair. I just needed to find someone to talk to about this issue, because it was just amazing how very little people understand. Like I went to Sierra Club in Austin. I went to 350, and I was like, oh, well, are we going to talk about animal agriculture? Because even if you don't want to go into global dimming, the Arctic melting, or anything, animal agriculture is the #1 carbon emitter. No one ever talks about it, but we all got to go vegan if we're going to solve the problem. And they don't even address it. They're like, oh no, it's not even on their websites. It's not even on their official websites, even though we have these other cascading problems, which are a much bigger deal, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, that's just what I want to say, is just get involved locally, not for the sense that, we're going to solve this problem. I do not think we're going to solve this problem. I think it's really sad that in our lifetimes, we're going to kill everything on this planet. When I say everything, I mean every single-celled organism and up. And we're going to live to see that. And that's really sad. And dealing with that is not too good a thought to have in my mind. Anyway, that's what I got to have to say.
Thank you, Alex. Wow, really good points. And I'm really heartened to see that you created a social club there in Austin. Kudos to you for doing that. That's freaking awesome. So I want to comment on some of the points that have been made in the last few minutes. So really good point about the retired Microsoft folks. Those are the folks who have actually the most money and the most time on their hands and the most life in the rearview mirror that they can draw upon life experiences and wisdom. And so even though the apparent focus is on Microsoft, the corporation, the actual focus is on all techies everywhere. It's like techies unite, and let's get on top of this and do what we can. What we can do is actually quite a lot, and it doesn't necessarily take a lot of resources. I mean, tiny little Radish, the little red engine that could, we've been putting together our own set of platforms basically on our own, and getting pretty far. So in fact, when we do the launch at Microsoft on the first week of September, Radish will be sufficiently ready for people to join and jump in the conversation. So we'll have communities of techies working on the collective intelligence platforms, the meta solution, communities of vegans working on actual solutions for reducing animal agriculture, et cetera, et cetera. So I really think it'll be the Emperor's New Clothes moment, Tuesday, September 4th in Redmond, Washington, where we, say, hey, it's time to acknowledge reality. We're getting our butts kicked and there are no viable solutions on the table. We need to build a factory to generate the solutions, and we can do that very quickly. So techies of the world unite. The time frame, with enough techies on board helping us code this up and implement it, we can have all the vital platforms of collective intelligence built and up and running within a matter of months, maybe even weeks. And it's a progressive thing. I mean, just with the conversational domain that Radish is about to launch, that takes us pretty far. And then with the solution builder, we get a lot farther. The global holistic modeling is going to be a very sophisticated undertaking. That's going to take a lot more people to build out. But step by step, we can get there. And what else are we going to do? Sit back and just watch the death, progress, the great dying progress? No, action is the antidote to despair. So this lays out an action plan for the tech sector, a proposed plan of action for the tech sector. But more generally, I'm saying techies of the world unite, join us, and let's jump into the conversation for starters. And I don't think anyone else is queued up after me at the moment.
I say something
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, sweetie. Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I had to go out and get my feet back on Mother Earth after listening to everything, just to reground myself. I just wanted to thank you all for your spirit and your participation in this movement that we're part of on the Earth. One thing I just wanted to mention again, I noticed no one reacted, which is fine, but is that, and this is kind of coming from what Alex, you were saying about this non-responsiveness, which I think is normal. Humans be tortured or die, then change, and that's a given. But some of us like change or embrace it. But we can sing and dance for Mother Earth and pray for her if we think of this time of the dying period or transition period. I think it's really important to remember that. It's something I practice. Also, there is something you can check out online. It's turtledance.org. There is an event or a ceremony coming up August 23rd and 26th, which actually Alice and I will be participating in. So you might want to check that out. I think that's another action that can be taken. as well as the involvement that many of you brought up today. So I just wanted to mention that again. All right. Love you all. I'm going to go head back out and take care of Mother Earth in my way. See you later.
Thank you, Jamin.
You're welcome, Don. All righty. Well, it's open mic, so going on mute. Dan,
Yeah, I've got to get going myself, and just a couple of final thoughts. As always, I really appreciate this kind of a discussion, and with people coming from sort of different perspectives, or the people have different foci, different areas they're focusing on. It's very, it seemed to me that things frequently in these kind of discussions, they flow in a fairly coherent way, although at times, people may think, well, this is going off the rails here. But, it just seems like the pressure is really on. I do believe that most people, if, to take the most unlikely occurrence in the world, if President Donald Trump were to address the world and say, we're in a climate crisis, you would see action and discussion going on like you would not believe. Because again, we're very tribalistic, we're very herd-like. And unfortunately, most people in the United States are relatively ignorant about many, many things: history, economics, psychology, sociology, etc. And the politicians also tend to be fairly ignorant. Most of them are attorneys who are fairly predatory, and they're motivated by acquisition of things, and they are kind of conditioned, maybe even more than other professions, to be very sociopathic in the terms of how they think and how they behave. So, but I do really think that, going back to the retired people who are not ignorant, it's very, very important that they stand up and speak out, because if you're somebody who is, a retired executive at Microsoft or Google, or there's all sorts of examples, you can start to have a voice. And if there's a little collection of people stating it's time to wake up, it's time to face the harsh realities before us, and we need to discuss whatever kind of solutions and the implications of solutions, etc., then you might have the population suddenly become conscious and very, very concerned about solutions. And I think that the pressure that we're going to be experiencing as all of these, weather occurrences, which are very drastic and very different than from what has happened in the past, I think that it's kind of a good trigger for these retired people to step up, step into a leadership role. Don't be afraid of doing that. And maybe something could happen. So I got to check out. I look forward to seeing everybody down the road here, hopefully next week. So I'm gonna check out. Take care, everybody.
Great to see you, Dan. We'll see you next week. Thank you. All right, open mic. Going on mute.
Well, I just wanted to say it's great to see you all. Thank you for a forum for honest, open discussion. Appreciate every one of you and everyone listening. And I'm still open for any ways how to communicate this. Jamin and I had a conversation several months ago about how to educate the public. And I had a conversation with Guy McPherson, and, welcome to my world. I mean, he's been trying to educate people on this for a long time. So I'm just going to keep on going. And Alex, I wanted to say, I did a dinner party and invited 6 people, as Jamin, you'll remember several months ago. They didn't want to discuss it again either. So I just think we don't give up. So hang in there, all of you. Appreciate you. Bye-bye. Alice, thanks for being a part.
So much. Thank you so much.
Love
and
you.
I'll continue being a part of it with all of you. And
All righty. I'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Love you, sister. See you
Love
soon.
you. Bye.
Thank you. Well, I'll jump in. You know, one point I want to emphasize is that I think that, you know, because the world has just gotten kind of glimpses of the problem, but really hasn't grappled with it. I think a big part of the reason people aren't grappling with it, number one, it's always been presented as this far away thing. Oh, 2100, right? Or hurricanes are happening way over there, far away from us. You know, so it's been cast as this far away thing in space and time. And but perhaps more important than that is the fact that no solutions have really been presented and talked about and kicked around under discussion in a serious way. The solutions that are presented are also presented as these far away solutions. Think like, you know, geoengineering, you know, massive scale carbon sequestration, you know, loading humanity onto spaceships and shipping us off to Mars. I mean, you know, these are just kind of far away borderline sci-fi things. And so I think that people have a tendency to not think about problems that have no solution or that they think are impossible to solve or just part of nature or, you know, whatever. You just kind of tune them out and focus on the here and now. You know, what can I do right now to improve my situation, which is all part of the separation trance and the ego trance that you know, humanity has been lulled into. So I believe that once we present to the world the story, remember, we're a species that runs on stories, the story that the tech sector is now jumping in to create not just a solution, but a whole factory to generate solutions. That story will start to capture people's imaginations. What could it be that the tech sector will come up with, right? What is this super intelligence that this crazy guy Jamin keeps talking about, and what can it generate? So I think this will really stir up a lot of imaginations, and some tech companies, plural, will seize the opportunity to take the lead and jump in and say, you know, we're in. And we're going to figure out what that means, and we'll keep you all posted. But, you know, the first press release is we are in. We're on the case, and it's about time. This is the Emperor's New Clothes moment, and I've been there before with leading the cannabis industry. Again, leveraging my Microsoft pedigree for that purpose. They called me the Bill Gates of Bud and all this stuff. And so I have some knowledge and experience of basically doing this kind of playbook, which is you jump out and take the lead on something that is totally new. The search for solutions to abrupt climate change is a relatively new thing. It's still very taboo, kind of like cannabis used to be prior to legalization. And then once legalization happened, you know, then everyone was talking about it, but they needed someone to follow. They needed, you know, someone to lead the conversation. So I stepped in and did that. And that's exactly what I'm going to do first week of September. Somebody's got to do it. I know how to do it, so I'm going to do it. And I invite everyone to join. Adam, I hope I'll see you there up at the Microsoft campus. I know we've got some stuff to talk about. You've got some important questions, and we'll address those. And Alex would love to see you there, and I would love to see everyone there. Let's create a little mini tech Woodstock in the Silicon Forest of Redmond, Washington, right in the heart of the Microsoft campus, and get the conversation going. You know, what else are we going to talk about? All right. Major League Baseball. It's time to talk climate change, and it's time to talk solutions, and it's time to build technological platforms to support all of the above. So we're going to rally the tech sector. Here's the headline, you guys. Former Microsoft executive rallies tech sector to join the race for solutions to climate change. There's your headline right there. And there will be a buttload of awesome quotes that I and others will be putting out there. And, you know, we'll lay out our vision for a meta solution built and operated by solutionaries to generate all the solutions we need. Solutions, meta solution, solutionaries. Those are the three flavors of solution that we need. We need people, we need platforms, and then we need the solutions that we can generate working together using those people and platforms. By the way,
I'm with you, Jamin.
Yeah,
Good luck. I'm with you. Good
Thank
luck.
you. Hey, come on out. You want to come out? You can crash.
I'm not going to come out.
All right.
I send my good luck from the interview.
Thank you. Fair enough.
I've been to Microsoft campus. I've been there for the interview. I have a mug. Where's my mug? They gave me a free mug when I interviewed. Anyway, the campus is huge. I've been to Seattle. I have a huge ass mug. Anyway.
Okay.
And I just want to put in there that I will be adding to this as much as possible in a media way of, you know, communicating what's going to be happening and all that we talked about, you know, amongst ourselves and what we've been talking about even before I came in on your conversations, to get it out there, to get this information out there because I work a lot with visual media. And so I know the importance that my generation, younger generations, and even older generations today are influenced by the images that they see more than what they read, because less and less people are reading and finding the time and the luxury to educate themselves. And so it will be a way to transmit this information on a global level very simply and very clearly so that everybody feels concerned. And that's what I'm working on just as a parallel. So being there physically, but also sending out these more subliminal messages, because that's how you get into people's minds now. And it's to use the tricks that quote unquote the bad guys on the dark side is using for good. So I think, again, the more of us implementing our knowledge and our ways, the more efficient. So we need the scientists, we need the techies, we need the artists, we need the musicians. You know, music is a huge way of communicating. It's ironic that you use the word Woodstock. I've been talking about festivals, you know, really get people emotionally affected as well. I mean, right now as we're talking, we live on the water. We can't see out right now. There's so much smoke coming in from Canada, Washington, and California. We can't even look out on the bay. So whether people want to believe it or not, as we said, it's a reality and we can't close our eyes to it anymore. You can barely breathe outside. I've been having a migraine for the past 2 days. So we'll see what happens, but I think we need to stay positive and know that this immediacy is going to come quicker than we think. As much as, you know, things are melting, that's a reality, but people are waking up and they will. So let's just stay positive.
All righty. Open mic. Really great discussion today, everyone.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, if there's nothing more to say at this particular juncture, what I'll do is I'll stop recording and I'll invite people to stick around if we want to have kind of an off-the-record, non-broadcast, non-recorded portion of the discussion, which is often fun. All right. So with that, I want to thank everyone for participating. Thank you all for watching. Thank you in advance for your comments on YouTube. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time on the Social Club at the End of the World. Thanks, everyone, for watching.